I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about what the Bible has to say for us. And so that's really the plan for this class. Today we're going to talk about what is God's part, what's our part, and I'll briefly talk on budgeting and pre-allocation of funds and long-term plans. We'll hit that at the end just to kind of go over it. I have some paperwork for you. But you have to understand that stewardship of the resources that we have a lot of things that we need to think about on a regular basis. So God had a plan, and so that's in the Bible for us. And so we need to really pay attention to that. And it's not easy to find, but you can read through it and you get it. And there are some things that are that you would say they're mandates, some that are just kind of wisdom statements. So we just need to look at the Scripture that way, that it just has some guidance for us, and so we just need to be attentive to that. So I'm going to find the clipper here, and we're going to get going. So I'm just going to tell you that Beth and I were married in 1971. So, and we went along in life, going to church, giving to the church, doing what we thought was right, living by man's economy, not necessarily God's economy. And so that can be a problem. In 1990, we moved to Clovis, California, which is kind of a cowboy town in the Central Valley. And I met a gentleman, his name was George Wortley, and he was teaching a class through Crown Ministry. It was called, the Crown Ministry, what it was a 12-week Bible study on Christian finances. And that's what it was about. And that turned our life around. It really did, because it made us focus together. So that was really important. So I'm going to tell you that if you're married, this is something you do together. If you're single, this is something you do with some wisdom and counseling from someone else to give you out. And if you've never done a budget and you're married, then I would suggest you probably need somebody else to kind of stand alongside you just to get you going, make sure you feel comfortable, okay? It's really important that we do that. So we have some scriptures that we're going to have to look at. I'm going to need your participation to kind of read on those things, because that's important. Let's see if I figure out how to use this clicker here. Nope. There we go. So how we handle finances really does impact our relationship with God. I don't know, does anybody have a chance to look up Luke 16:11 for me?
I got it, Mike.
Okay.
Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you?
An important statement for us to think about. You know, you could say unrighteous or you could say worldly. It means the same thing. It's just the monies that we deal and make here in this world. So we just had to be attentive to that. So, you know, my glasses just don't work on that screen back there. So I'll be turning my head here periodically. So one of the things that's kind of important here is just to kind of understand how God thinks this was so important. When you think about how many scriptures deal with prayer versus how many scriptures deal with handling money or finances. Anybody would guess on the prayer component? How many verses do you think there are in the whole Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, all put together? Go ahead, Braxton, shout out a number. It's okay.
300.
Good guess. Good guess.
450.
Good job. Good job. All right. How about for money? How many? 20. Oh, okay. That's good. All righty. So here we go. Here's the answer. 300 to 600, depending on the version that you read. It can change that. And money has about a little over 2,300 verses that deal with money and stuff. Because it'd be like, you know, just debt. It could be a lot of things, you know, just being a good steward. It could be things that we just need to be attentive. So that's kind of an important thing to think about, you know, that the Bible really cares about us. So God had a plan for us to do this. So we saw that in Luke 16, that Christ equates how we handle money with the quality of our spiritual life. Bottom line, it really is important, because if you're focused on Christ and handling His resources and His wealth, you know, then we get to understand this better. Matthew 22 or 25:21 shows us what happens when we handle things well and we're good stewards of the wealth that we're dealing with. Maybe in this example, it's people that are taking care of property for someone else. But because they did it well and they did it correctly, they're blessed with that statement of, well done, good and faithful servant. So, and that's the same thing for us. When we're faithful with that, God blesses us and takes care of us. I'm not saying we don't have problems. I'm not saying we don't get into trouble every now and then. But he does work us through that, and sometimes it's just trials and for us to kind of grow in. So just an important thing for us to think about. There's a book that I read. I don't know if you guys have read this book. It's called The Money Challenge. It's the 30-Day Money Challenge. It's a good read. It's really kind of an important thing to look at. It's a young lady that is going to the bank because she feels like she doesn't know what to do with her life anymore. It's all upside down. Her finances are whacked. She's in debt. You know, she sees a man sitting along the side of the sidewalk there that's struggling, panhandling, asking for handouts. She wishes she could help him, but she can't because she doesn't have any extra money herself. And a guy walking out of the bank with a big wad of cash in his hand who just kind of scoffs the guy that's asking for something. And she apologizes for that because she knows that's not right. So how do we deal with that? So she goes to the bank. She meets this guy in the bank. We'll just call him GB. That's what they call him in here. Stands for probably his real name, but they used to... Yeah, or great banker. So it was good. And so he listens to her story. She just kind of does a hard drive download on him right there in the bank, and he writes 3 things on a piece of paper and gives them to her. And those 3 things are give, spend wisely, and save. So you think about, I don't know what you did for your kids when you're growing up, but from our kids, we did a 3-envelope kind of thing where they had to put money to give, money to save, money that was theirs to spend wisely. Often it wasn't done wisely, but it was there. Or you might use jars. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's the same kind of concept. This lady goes on and continually meets with this banker every week. And he guides her and gives her good counsel and wisdom to develop things like a budget, develop things like allocations of how she allocates her funds. She does get into a problem where she has given to the church like she has pledged herself to do, and her car breaks down. And she doesn't build up her car fund yet. So what do you do? So she has to talk through that and how to build that and get yourself going up. And I'll tell you that pre-allocation funds, you can make a decision that you're going to do that and get that set up, but it takes a year or 2 to get it all well funded so that when the bill comes due, the money's in that column and you can do it and take care of it. So those are things that just take time. So don't think you can walk out of here and have a game plan that's perfect. It doesn't work that way. I've been doing this since 1990, and I can't say it's perfect all the time, but I'm consistent to do it the same way. I plan for my giving. I plan for my budget. Every year in December, I finalize the year. I look at all my expenses. I reanalyze those and recalculate what I need to distribute to my allocation funds. The same thing you can do. It's very simple. Okay, so those are things that we get to do. So I would, if you want, it's a fun read, the 30-Day Money Challenge. So it's something to think about. So the thing you have with problem with possessions is how many people say that's my car, that's my house. That's my checking account. That's my money. In 2008, when the housing market crashed, my retirement portfolio that I had, because I'd been working for nonprofit organizations and churches, that mine dropped more than 40%, but not 50%. So it was a big drop. It's kind of like. And one of the guys in our church was a certified financial planner. He says, "What are you going to do about that?" I said, "Do about what?" "Well, your accounts all dropped." I said, "Yeah, well, God has a plan, not me, so it's going to work out however he wants that to work out." So you just can't try and control it yourself. You just have to trust in God, be faithful, be consistent, be steadfast, and we'll do that. So somebody's phone's going off there. So Matthew 6:24. I don't know if somebody's got that, and if somebody could grab 1 Chronicles 29:11, that'd be great. Okay.
No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth.
That's true. So you can't. You know, you have to make a choice how you're going to do this, how you're going to handle that. So, so those of you that just got in here, we're just kind of doing a class on finances. So we're going to have four weeks of this. So I hope you don't mind my voice. And sometimes I get kind of wimpy because it's important to me, but that's okay. We're going to kind of cover God's part and our part this week. Next week we'll kind of look at debt and go over allocations, how we allocate funds to our savings accounts to avoid debt, and the painful cost of debt and what that does to us. Then we'll do a class on giving, why it's important, and giving is, you know, you think of giving, oh, that's just giving to church. No, it's not just giving to church. It's our time, it's our talents, our treasures. So just, we need to think about all that. And then I'll do the last class will be on savings. You could call that investing, you could call it savings, however you want to call that. But I'm not an investment broker. I don't have a Series 6 or 7 license, so I can talk about stuff, but I can't guide you on that. That's something you'd have to see somebody about, but I can give you some direction. So, okay, who's got 1 Chronicles 29:11? Go ahead. Everybody hear that? So essentially what Kilo was reading to us says, everything in the heavens and earth is yours, O Lord, for this is your kingdom. Honor and glory come from you alone. Riches and honor come from you. So it's his. Everything is his. It's ours to be good stewards of. It's not ours to take possession and run our way and ignore him and his direction of it. Because he has a plan for us how to use that. And that might be taking care of somebody that in a difficult situation, or providing some extra food for a family, or helping out at the church more, giving more at the church. So there's a lot of ways that we can take care of that. So, whoops, too many. So this is where I brought up the give generously, save wisely, and live appropriately. Proverbs, or in Matthew 6:33, it talks about needs versus wants. What I need versus what I want. I want that new truck, or but all I need is some transportation to get to and from work. That's really all I really need, but we make things more. So, so basic needs are like food and shelter and clothing. That's really what we really need. I mean, that's all that is. But we make it more complex, and we just drive ourselves crazy trying to make sure we keep up with the Joneses down the street. So. Or the Smiths, or whatever. So, so you know, so just remember 1 Chronicles 29:11 and Matthew. Just important, just to kind of think about that. So, here's some reading here, getting to know God from Isaiah 51:3. Could I get one to read that one? Someone to read Isaiah 40:26, and let's just do Psalm 139:3 and 4. Okay. Okay. Who's got Isaiah 51? Anybody? Pardon? You got it? Okay. Go ahead.
Isaiah 51:13. That you have forgotten the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, that you fear continually all day long because of the fury of the oppressor, as he makes ready to destroy.
All right.
But where is the fury of the oppressor?
Yeah. So a lot of times we forget who God is and who's in control. So, Andy, you have the next one?
Yep. Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these things? He who brings out their hosts by number, calling them all by name. By the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing.
All righty. And Pastor Jeremy?
Psalm 139:3 and 4.
Yes, sir.
You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all.
It's so great that he is in touch with us. He does know, and it's our responsibility to stay in touch with him. So our part, what is our part? Genesis 14:22 to 23. Someone can grab that. Dax, you got it? Okay. It's okay. Take your time. We're not in a hurry.
Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, for fear you would say, I have made Abram rich.
Right, so this is where people try and say they made you rich, they made you rich. It's not they. God has provided the opportunity for you to have the wealth that you have. It's just important to remember who's in charge and who controls. So this 1 Corinthians 4:2 was more, it is required of stewards that a man be found faithful. And that's our responsibility, to be faithful in how we do this. How do we go about working the funds that we have? How do we work with our budget? How do we take care of that? And just how do we keep ourselves in check? Because our evil side of us can take us and run all kinds of ways. What's the craziest thing I did? We were living in Chico, and this is before I took the classes and had a better idea what to do. And I was working with, I was in charge of an emergency department in Northern California, and we had ground emergency medical services. We had ALS ambulance. We ran an EMT, a paramedic, and an MICN. I was an MICN. We also had a rotorcraft. We had that. So, and we also had fixed wing service. So, I mean, I've done patient flights from Redding to Dallas, Texas, from Anchorage, Alaska to Philadelphia. So a lot of things you do. But since you're flying with them, you get to, you only have one pilot. You get to be second in command. You get to sit on the other side. You get to fly. So what end up doing, one of their pilots was also an instructor. So I became a pilot. And then what do? Well, you get into those things. Well, I need a plane. I need to have a plane. So I did. I bought one. So wasn't necessarily cheap. And then you get your first insurance bill at $1,600. And you have to have your first annual inspection and another $750 because you had to have brakes done. So you think, and we're just buying a house. I'm thinking, no, this was not a wise idea. So fortunately, I found some guy that really liked the plane. Now, we used the plane quite a bit. We'd fly to the coast to go for lunch. So that's called a $50 hamburger. We flew the whole family back to outside Chicago to DuPage County Airport and spent 2 weeks visiting family. So you could do some fun things with it, that's true. But and the gas wasn't that much more. I don't think I spent any more on fuel going to Chicago and back than I would have driven a car. So, I mean, you could rationalize things in your mind to weigh that. But was it the right thing to do? No, it wasn't the right thing to do. I have kids growing up. They're going to need cars or they're going to need transportation and stuff. So time to get rid of an airplane. So we did that. It was a nice plane, but we got rid of it. So monthly budgets. I just feel like I need to talk about monthly budget. So anybody know what this is? How many people use one of these? Okay, so do you guys have a budget? See, I have a budget. I have a checkbook register from 1984 from the same bank sitting in a file at the house. And I do what's called, just a checkbook carve out, just to kind of go through it twice a year. Where am I spending my money? Who's in charge of my life? You just need to know, is it that internet service? Are you watching movies? You just trying to, you're going to the shooting range quite a bit, spend a lot of money there. Just the only way you can know is to carve out and see where you're really spending your money. And I pick March and September, the months I look at. I try not to pick a holiday month because that kind of throws things off. But it's just important to do that. So I have some paperwork here. I hope I have enough. I have a couple guys that are going to try and pass these out without getting them all. Oh, okay. They're packets of about, you have to, okay, good.
There are 3 sections, you can take this section.
Yeah, one per household probably be the way to go, so. And if we need more, I have all the originals. I can take care of that and make more if we need it, so I'll be able to talk about it pretty well. I think I only made 24 or something like that, so wasn't sure how many people would be here. Usually when you have a class of finances, everybody goes the other way, so. And I don't blame them, so it's kind of scary, so. I will tell you that being consistent about your savings is important. I know that when we were in Chico, working for the hospital, they were a nonprofit organization, so I had what's called a 403B. A lot of people are familiar with 401ks. 403B is associated with nonprofit organizations. The same thing, it's a little different, has different retirement components to it. And so I started saving that, and that was good. I thought we were doing pretty good considering I had bought and sold an airplane and we had a house going. And I think I was in a mutual funds and I had a little more than $20,000 in like 3 years. I thought I was doing pretty good. But usually hospitals like that, they'll have what's called a matching component. To me, that's free money. You get going, so maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 6%, whatever. So you get that, and it kind of helps you build. Now, when I left there, I went to Stanford to manage the emergency department in Stanford. And I met one of the nurses in the department. Her husband was a certified financial planner. So I met with Casey. That was in 1989. He's still my counselor, my advisor, after all these years. So he lived in Redwood City, Menlo Park area. He now lives in Carson, Nevada, because he hates California just as much as I do. So, but he calls me twice a year. We stay in touch. If I have a question, I can send it. When I had to replace the hot water heater, where should I pull this money from? What should I do? No, don't touch that one. That's got NVIDIA, and just leave that alone. Okay, great. Okay, so it's just helpful to have somebody to kind of look at. So, but I'll tell you that at Stanford, he took over my money management for me at that point in time. When I left Stanford 2 years later, that $20,000 was now $100,000. So just letting the market grow for you is helpful, but you have to kind of be patient and keep your hands out of the till. It just is an important thing to do. Whether that's a savings account, a mutual fund, or mutual funds, doesn't make any difference. So first of all, on this packet that I gave you, I don't know if everybody has one, but the first thing I have in there, it's called a faithful steward. Okay, it's a little wheel like this. And you look at all the stuff that's on there. And this is not something you pick one and go. This is stuff, all of them at the same time, that you need to be attentive to. So, train your children, avoid debt, seek counsel, practice honesty, give generously, spend wisely, work hard, save consistently. Just important to do that. It really is, because it's going to make a difference. Because how are your children going to learn how to handle money and stuff like that? I remember my son, when he was married and they had purchased a home, and he said, "Man, things are tight." He said, we were never tight with money. And how did you do that? And I said, well, I was consistent about how I saved and how I watched our debt, stuff like that. And he pretty much had instant gratification disease. So that was his problem, not mine. So he learned that on his own. So, but you just have to be attentive to that and take care of yourself to make sure you have some good things. So I have what's called a budget summary there, just for things to help you think about. And the next page is a monthly budget. This is what I used, and I did this on a spreadsheet. I no longer have the active file of that, but I can recreate it if I need to. In fact, I have the blank one, but it has none of the different functions that are supposed to add this, subtract that, move it over here. I just have to recreate that. But it just gives you things to think about, what you're going to have in your budget, how you're going to do that. It's just important to do. Because if you don't know where your money's going, how are you going to change anything? You might do a budget, because I'll tell you right now, whatever you're spending right now on all your bills and all that stuff, that's your budget. Whether you want to admit that or not, that's your budget. Do you like your budget? If you don't, maybe you need to change something about it. But you have to figure out where you are and then where you can adapt to. So just keeping those things for you to think about is important. Now, percentage guide. I think this is an important tool for people to have, because a lot of people don't understand. You're going to go buy a house, and the banker says, man, you can afford this much because you make this much. And you do that, and next thing you know, you have 50, 60% of your income tied up in a house payment. So, and that's a problem. And if you only put down 1%, you're really struggling, because now they've tacked on mortgage insurance to go along with it, which jacks up the price anymore. So just look at this, because it kind of tries to keep things simple. And I live by this. I know that my food bill, since I have 2 people in the house, is going to be about $500 a month. And that also includes the fact that we're going to have a fellowship group in the house. And I'm kind of frugal, so I look for sales. So I think we're going to do a big pork butt when we have ours. That doesn't mean everybody gets to come there, but the group will. And so I have a nice big pork butt, and we'll do. So I kind of draw that in, so I know that's going to be in my food budget when I do that. So you have to think about that. Holidays are different. I keep a holiday food budget column, so I know what that is. There's just a lot of things that you kind of do on a daily basis. You know, do you have insurance? Do you have a medical insurance? Do you have auto insurance, housing insurance? All those things you kind of have to track and keep them a thing. So right now, I'd say with insurance, we're kind of all going to be feeling the pain of California's calamity, because the insurance companies are going to all start trying to protect themselves, because they know they're going to be in trouble here pretty soon. So just having something to kind of guide you on, you know, if you've got your housing going and you've got, you know, 35-40% into your housing, and you should only have 26% into it, then you need to do something to figure out how to adjust that. It could be that you make more money. That would be one way to get your income up to help with that and process it out. So just a lot of things that you can think of. I hope that's helpful. I always found it to be big help to me. This is an income allocation sheet, so where you put your money. So and next week when we do this, I'll have my own allocation sheets that I have. And I have an allocation sheet for savings account and an allocation sheet for a money market account. And why do I do that? I would say when Beth and I first took the class, we would say, well, we have X dollars in the savings account. She could think of the way she was going to spend it, and I could think of the ways I was going to spend it, and it wasn't the same, and you could deplete it real fast. But once you get into savings allocations, you get this where you are, it's in the homeowner's insurance has come due. And there's my insurance column. There's the money I have for that. I can pull that money and go pay that bill, and I haven't created a problem for anybody else. It just is a helpful tool to make your life less stressful. And that's really what this is about. So I think it's just important to do that. The last thing I have here is financial goals. Probably going a lot faster than I need to this morning, but that's the way this is. So financial goals is just kind of having a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. That's all that's about. I'll tell you, in the mid-'90s, when Ethan was getting ready to go to Fresno State, and I was going to work on my master's degree, you have 2 different college funds you have to fund and stuff like that. So you have to negotiate this out. Now, he didn't get any scholarships. I did, though. I got a $4,000 scholarship going through that, through the program. So, I mean, you can do things to kind of hold off it, but you need to have a plan. You need to know where your money's going to go, how it's going to go, what's going to look like. Is there anything else you want to do? You know, I'd like to give 15% of my income to the church, or 10%, or whatever. So just things that you need to think about and have a game plan for how you want to move forward on that. So educational goals, your lifestyle goals, you're going to have kids, you know, you'd like to make the following investments. You just have to think about everything together. So it's not necessarily so easy to do all the time, but those are the things that you have to do. So I'm going to open this up so you can ask questions if you want to, because sometimes I go so fast that, you know, there's not a chance for you to kind of ask a question and things like that. So if you are a renter, I will tell you that if you don't have renter's insurance, you might think that's okay, but if your apartment burns down, the apartment owner gets insurance remittance, but you, the renter, don't get anything. So just an important thing to think about. Yes, sir?
So you've been going through counseling courses to work on your counseling certification, so I want to tap into your counseling heart and mind a little bit here.
Okay.
What would you say to someone as we're thinking about God's part as creator of all things and owner of all things, and our part as stewards? What would you say to someone who feels like he or she has been seeking to be a good steward, but is almost feels like he's working against the sovereignty of God? Like, God's in control of all these things, and it seems like anytime I get a step ahead, he puts me 2 steps back because of housing costs or grocery costs or various life circumstances.
Yeah.
Someone who has that heart to want to be a good steward, but feels like God hasn't made that way for them to actually get traction.
Yeah, so I would talk to them about, are they sure that God's doing that to them? I mean, that would be a big question, because we live in a evil world that does things that are different. So I would have to talk to them just to kind of evaluate why they think God's working opposed to them. You just have to kind of look at scriptures to help guide them and understand that God's going to support them. But are they working more on, they think they're doing what God would have them do, but are they really doing that? How do we evaluate that? We have to look at their actions and how that plays out, how we look at that, and just try and talk with them, because they're going to need counsel. And it might be that that's a single person or a married couple. We have to talk to everybody. We can't just talk to one person. We have to know what both are thinking and just spend the time to kind of go through it and look at what they were trying to accomplish that would satisfy God's direction in their life. And were they trying to do it too fast, not trying to do it the right way? Were they trying to do it on their own without God really doing that? I'm thinking, I know that my homeowner's insurance, or my auto insurance went up $200 this month. I know that. So you just see that now. So you have to kind of anticipate that things are going to change, and you have to work that way. So you pre-allocate money to accommodate for the different expenses that you have. Cost of living went up by 3%, so my distributions to my savings allocation should go up by 3% as well, if not a little bit more, just to anticipate that there are things that are going to be roadblocks. But God's not out to make our life miserable as long as we honor him. And that's really the important thing that we do, is we honor God in our giving, in our time, in our prayer life, because it's important. If we're not praying, we're missing a lot of things. So it's just important to do that. So, yes, sir.
So kind of in the same vein, if you're counseling people, when you have young families, the ones that are really struggling month to month to make ends meet, so I've been there. How would you counsel someone if they really are truly struggling to pay bills, all of that good stuff?
Well, we have to start with talking to them about what their income is, what their expectations in life are, what they're paying for, and try and see how we can help them and kind of reduce any burden of expenses that are unnecessary. Everybody feels like they need to have cell phone and internet service, and I get that. It's important, but does every kid in the family need to have a phone? I mean, what does it cost for that to happen? When someone tells me they're completely out of money and they still have all these electronic services, then maybe we need to reevaluate that. What's a need versus what's a want? And sometimes those are hard to figure out for people. You might need a phone because you're working and you travel and you're doing a lot of phone calls with that, so that would make sense. But Johnny, that's 12, doesn't need the same iPhone with, internet activity and stuff like that, because you don't know what kind of trouble he's getting into. And so you just have to make the family decide. But families are going to struggle with their finances and money. How can we help them kind of make a budget to look at, and how do we live by that? Because if you can't live by the budget, you're going to be in trouble. You really will be. So doing a wallet biopsy is important to figure out what you're spending money on, how that goes, how it works. It's a process that you have to go through. Painful at times, but important. So, anybody else? Yes, Sam.
So, at the risk of oversimplifying things, how would you, basically, what do you want us to know from this, especially this first little segment here, because we're going to be going about this for a while.
Sure.
What do you want us to make sure we leave with our understanding, and then also, what do you want us to do when we get home?
Sure.
What's our homework?
So right now, what I want you to think about is who owns everything, who's in charge. Being faithful stewards is important. And just remember, Luke 16:11, I thought that was just an important thing to remember. If you have not been faithful in the use of worldly wealth or unrighteous wealth, who's going to trust you? His riches is what I look at that as. So that's not an imperative, but that's a recommendation and a guidance for you to have that. So that would be one thing for you to have. When you get home, you're probably going to want to look at your finances. I don't know if you want to do that before the football game or after the football game, but so, you have to have some time to do that and think about it. It might be that you just plan some time to sit aside and go through all of your expenses for the past year or a couple of months and have an idea what those expenses are. So you can work through and put them into categories. This is food, or this is entertainment, this is insurance, this is clothing. I even have a category for hair because I like to get my hair done. I like to get cut. I like to go to a good place. I don't want to go to the Lou's Barber Shop there in Payson. So anyway.
You're going to start a war.
Yeah. So that's just me. I mean, I don't drink and I don't go with wild women, so I get my hair cut. So what can I say? So that's the way it is. So just to kind of spend time looking at what you spent and what your expenses are, and seeing if you can't start pulling things together to have some kind of a budget for how to kind of move forward and how to work on that. So I would say that's an important thing to think about. So as we go forward. So yes, sir.
Super important, finances. We spend a ton of time on it in our country, right?
Yep.
Money is all-consuming. How do you look at the stewardship of finances versus the stewardship of, say, time or automobiles? Do you see a difference in those?
No, they're all tied together. We have to be good stewards of everything, our time. When we think about giving, I think about giving time. And I think, helping clean the church is nice, but spending time with other people is also important. Have I done this kind of class or study with a family in this church? Yes, I have. And it took several weeks to go through that with them. And I think that's an important thing to remember. It's not like something you're going to just do right away. You can look at, I think, like Dave Ramsey has a lot of stuff out there on the market you can look at. He has 7 short steps that you can go through. I mean, those are great tools. The only issue I have is Dave Ramsey's pretty focused on selling some kind of insurance or life insurance, homeowners insurance, Medicare insurance. It's his big thing. So, and I think life insurance, he uses universal life, and I'm not a big fan of that. But anyway, that's just me personally. So, but there are tools out there. Some people will use different apps that will do that, like, was it Rocket Money app or something like that, which is great, except for it's not a budget, it just collects how much you spend money here and there. And having a budget's important. I use Quicken, and I have, before it was Quicken, when it was Parsons, so I just have used it for a long time, so it makes sense to me. I can look at any moment, I can look at how I'm doing on food or fuel or utilities or whatever, and so we go through that. Now, I think these kinds of things will do, and I will put out something from Dave Ramsey here in the next class that deals with, having an emergency fund is important. So usually people often want to have an emergency fund set aside. So that might be, used to be in the 90s, that was $400, which is nothing anymore. So now if you don't have at least $1,000 set aside, you can't handle a car breakdown. So having that as a basic component to get started with, those are important things. But yes?
The time and money thing has always fascinated me because I'm a big believer in budgeting time. Most of us understand we need to budget money, even though we often fall short of what we need to be doing.
Sure.
But very few people even acknowledge the need to budget time. And we know time is money and money is time, that phrase, and there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And what fascinates me is that with finances, all of our incomes and expenses are all different. But with time, all of our income's the same. We all have the same amount.
Right.
Now, our expenses with time, like our demands and stuff, will obviously vary, but we all have the same income, so to speak.
Right.
And it's fixed. And so we have to be really careful about that. But so often, if you're bad with time, you're also going to be bad with money.
Right.
And vice versa.
And there's a lot of things that we have to do with our time. Everybody probably has some type of devotion that you have, or you're reading the Bible on a yearly basis kind of program. I mean, those are all kind of things, but they take time. And how do you plan that? When you have to work, you have to work that into your work schedule. Do you get up a half hour earlier before to do that? I mean, to increase the amount of time you have available to you that day, or not. I mean, you just have to be honest to yourself and parcel out your time to accomplish the things that you feel are important in honoring God. And I think that's really an important aspect of that. So, that answer your question? Okay. So I think that, depending on where you are in your family, if you have kids, then you've got time you need to spend with the kids and develop them and teach them, teaching them how to do finance stuff. Now, Beth was kind of a bookkeeper by background, and she did a lot of stuff with Sunday school stuff. So she developed lesson plans for the preschool at the church that we went to, and she had 3 or 4 years worth of stuff already done. So she did a lot of time, so she had that, because once it made it easier for her to, if someone needed to do a class and she wasn't going to be there, she had a plan for them. She had crafts and stuff. So you just have to budget your time pretty well. So I have plenty of time on my hand since I have 6 Saturdays and a Sunday each week. So, but I still have to make sure I get things done. We have a men's group that we read for Tuesday morning. Every other Sunday we have a class that we're doing, so that has some reading and some study and some talks that we have to do. I have a talk on this Wednesday night here, so I have to make sure I have those things kind of structured out and done and typed up or done in PowerPoint or whatever. So, and then you have to keep up with your finances and make sure that your bills are coming in, you're getting that all set up. Right now we have tax forms coming out, so you have to get ready for taxes, and you just have to not be burdened by it. Just it's the way of this evil society we live in that we have to do that. So, I mean, should we have to pay taxes? I would say if the government managed their money better, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But since they have their payment on the interest on their loans is $1 trillion a year, what could they do for this country if they didn't have to pay that? And it's the same thing with you. What could you do if you didn't have to have such debt-laden interest that you have to pay and just to be concerned with? So those are the things that we just need to think about and stuff like that. So, but any other questions? That's all I have. So did I answer your question completely? So I think doing a wallet biopsy is important. I think it helps you out, gives you a better understanding. I know for Beth and I it did, because it realized. And I'll tell you that Beth and I had only one account. We each had a checkbook, and every Friday she would bring me her checkbook so that I could just enter it in the computer and keep track of it, so that we know it's not that she was trying to hide anything from me or anything like that. You know, if she had something that was going to be an unusual expense, she would give me a heads up of what she was doing and why she was doing it. And, you know, she's as much in charge of our finances as I am, so we did that together. But we were on the same page of the hymnal. I can't remember which page it was, but we were there, and we just did that together. So it's important. I mean, if you're not working together, it's a struggle. If she's doing her own thing and I'm doing my own thing, next thing you know, that there's big red letters all over your finances and you're in trouble. So that's the way that is. So any other questions? I hope that's helpful. Okay, next, yes.
I have a question, but I also want to share. Mike has helped my husband and I, and we use this exact thing. We still use it. I've gotten a little away from it the last little while, but it was so helpful, especially for me. Like, I didn't grow up learning about money or finances at all. So when we went through this with Mike and Beth, it was like eye-opening to see the things that we spend money on, and you're not even like thinking about it. I know I have a horrible, I don't want to call it addiction, but Amazon, you know, it's so convenient. You're like, oh, I gotta have this laundry soap, or I need this for the, you know, groceries, and you kind of play it off as like he was talking about needs and wants. Like, but do you really necessarily need this, or is it more of a want?
Yeah.
And then my question for you, a lot of us in this room have young kids.
Right.
And we want to be mindful of, you know, sending them to college if that's something that, you know, comes their way. Is there a fund or a plan or something that you would recommend for us?
Well, 529 funds you can do, you know, so you can do that, or you can set up mutual funds for them, or you can do some type of life insurance plans as well that have a cash value to them. You know, I mean, I would say you're better off doing 529 where you get into a mutual fund. It's a better thing to do. So don't ask me which one. I know the state has one, and some states are better than others, but you know, you just have to do that. So my goal as we grew up was to not have a house payment by the time I was 55, and to have that all solvent. So that was a goal, and that's painful to do that. Now, we did receive some money from Beth's parents, and just, you know, my dad died at the age of 63 with a brain tumor. I had to take over my mom's finances because she was a whatever plan, whatever. So we had to kind of help her with that and to save her money so that she could have enough to survive with. So, and that happened. So.
I was just going to say, for our kids, we have done an account through our Edward Jones guy for each one of our kids that's puts their money, it's like their custodian accounts.
Right.
And or custodial accounts. And they just get to do the money market thing. But that way when they turn 18 or 21, whatever the age is, I think it's 18, they can use it for whatever. So it's not locked up to have to be used toward
For education, yeah. It's a good plan, it's a good point. So what we did for Ethan, and I got Ethan into a Washington Mutual Fund when he was young, just to start putting money. Sometimes you have to teach your kids to save, to develop that habit, to be consistent, and that helps them grow, helps them move along. So that way you can do that. So, and then sometimes you can get real crazy. Now, we were living in the mountains of California. We had our houses paid off, but I needed a shop. I needed where I could have my table saw and all my equipment and my fly tying stuff and my reloading equipment. I could be out there, so I did. I took out a $50,000 note and built a 30 by 30 garage with cedar siding and a covered porch, wood stove, bathroom, had everything, all the bells and whistles, and the right kind of power, and it was good. But I had a rule that I had to pay it off in 5 years. So that was the rule. Beth and I both agreed with that, and she thought that it was a good idea. And so we'd move forward with that. That was in 2005, we did that, and we actually paid it off in 2008. So you can do things, but you have to plan. You can't just say, I want to do this, and then not understand what the consequences may or may not be with that plan. So, yes, sir.
You gotta keep career paths in mind too. I mean,
That's true.
you gotta keep, like, some kids wanna be a scientist, and then that requires
College.
a degree from bachelor's to a doctorate. And
Sure.
some kids want to go into the military, which usually the military will pay for their education.
Right.
You just have to keep in mind what they think they're gonna be doing.
That's true. And I did all those. I went in the military for 6 years. I went to college, completed my bachelor's, but I went through a nursing school in the military, so when I got out, I could work as a nurse. But then I went on and got a master's degree as well. So, and it costs money to do all that stuff, but you have to have a plan on what you want to do. So, my career path took me into open heart surgery and interventional cardiology, where we worked with patients that needed stents and what have you. I found it exciting. It was a lot more fun than the emergency department where they would swear at you and stuff. So, I just liked that better. So, anyway, so any other questions? Do you have you use a different kind of budget for yourselves and stuff like that?
I made an Excel spreadsheet that
You use as well, yeah, and that's what I use as well. So I have them. I have Excel spreadsheet for all kinds of stuff. So Christmas cards, whatever gifts and stuff like that. Keep track of what we do. So it's just important to do that. Excel, yes, sir.
I would just say that, Stacy works at the bank, and the bank will lend you money. They will keep lending you money.
Yeah.
There are people that are at 125% of their income on their debt, 130%. So basically, the credit cards, the financial institutions are geared toward making it as easy as possible for people to take money.
Right.
And no plan is a plan.
Yeah.
You'll end up getting one sheet and if you're not careful.
Yeah. So remember the faithful steward. It's an important thing to kind of go through and just be attentive to. It's just helpful. It gives you guidance on what to think about. Because life is hard. So, and just making sure we stay on track is important. So, otherwise, next week, yes.
Yeah, just to add to that, one aspect of being a faithful steward, and piggyback on what he was saying, is to receive counsel. There is wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
Right.
Not only in sitting down and establishing a budget, like you had mentioned, but when looking at making big decisions like that, taking out a loan from the bank. It's important to remember they don't have your best interests at heart.
No.
They have an agenda of their own. They're looking to make a buck or two.
Exactly.
And so just finding somebody who does have your best interest at heart and to utilize the resources that the church has available is an aspect of faithful stewardship.
Yeah. Seeking counsel, wise counsel is really important. It really is. It's helpful to me. It'll be helpful to you. So I just know that's a good thing to do. So some of us have good experience to share, and we're happy to do that. So, all right, Phil.
Just real quick on the education accounts for college, some states will have prepayment plans. Those aren't necessarily your best option, but they're out there. If the Coverdell Education Savings Account's out there, it's a low dollar amount, but it's available. If the IRS still has that going, the 529 plan will affect your taxes, but that's a super good one. And then whatever Utah has, the UTMA or the UGMA is what Jeremy was referring to. That doesn't impact taxes, but that's available for more than just college. If you do the 529, it's locked into college, but you can move it from one dependent to another. So there's probably 4 or 5 different
Yeah.
options for that. And the important thing is because all of this is individual, right? Each household is just doing due diligence research on it. So there's quite a few different ways to go about that.
Yeah. All righty. I think anytime the government gets involved in what we're doing, just to be careful. It's just a word of wisdom. So I remember in late 60s, so that's a long time ago, late 60s, 69, 68, when they started Medicare. It really messed up how the government reimburses for healthcare stuff, and it just kind of got ugly. So I remember that, and I was there, so that's what I can say. So anyway, all right, let me close in prayer, and we'll get out and get some coffee and stretch our legs a bit. Dear God, we just thank you for the wisdom you have in your word, that you can guide us and give us direction, to give us other brothers and sisters that can help us as we work through the toils of this life. We just want to be, work with you and through you, but doing your will and guiding our actions as we take care of your wealth, your finances that we are in charge of as stewards. In your precious name, amen.